Hello, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Tuesday, January 18th, and I hope you all had a wonderful long holiday weekend there. But it's time to dive back into some crypto, and lots going on in the market today, looking relatively fragile here. CJ, I think you made a great point in our chat that the TNX is making new all-time highs here. Lots to consider as we look at Bitcoin's price action and the price action of this market in general. But before we dive into some of those things, CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Difficult market to trade, definitely just in the short term. So just being kind of cautious. Good to have some cash too, in case we go lower. Obviously, I think it's a good time to start considering like just playing both sides or just having a more objective mindset. Things aren't looking particularly bullish, obviously. But yeah, you had mentioned the TNX. That's probably the one reason why like everything is down today. Also, the DXY is bouncing off kind of a throwback technical level. So you see both of those going up. It's going to make it difficult for equities and crypto to increase amongst a market like that.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
are you doing?
I'm doing all right, CJ. Doing all right. Yeah, not only are we seeing some relatively interesting price action today, it was also a relatively unique weekend for some assets. One in particular that I want to cover a couple headlines on is Cardano. That thing has been beat up over the last 4 months here since the top in November. Started to see some speculation as we finally have some utility coming live to that ecosystem. Sunday Swap launching this Thursday, so very, very soon. I'll cover a few headlines there. Before we get into that, CJ, you want to start with some Bitcoin and some traditional equities? Just give some context to this market right now.
Yeah. So last night, was watching these bids come in kind of on the 15-minute chart, as I always do. And some interesting stuff was occurring last night. You get a couple, sell offers that come up above price, but for the most part, this was getting bid up pretty well by somebody last night, or just some particular viewpoints. Until we got those rates that ultimately came in, we had news that the TNX had increased to levels that have not really been seen since January of 2020. And so immediately when that happened, those bids pretty much got removed, and we started heading lower. Now, if we look at kind of DXY and TNX, you'll see what I mean when it comes to kind of that throwback pattern. If we go to DXY here, so you have basically this entire period of time where we spent below the 94 level in kind of a bearish consolidation. Now you actually have kind of a role reversal of that level where it acts as previous resistance, comes back, tests down as support, and actually we're starting to see a bounce from that level. So, while it was nice to have the weakness in the dollar over the last week or two, we are bouncing from that level. Very similar story in the TNX. We had topped just briefly last week on that TD sequential 9. Had some nice price action in the equity market as it had come down. That was, subsequent 3 days. Now we're up above a new high, ultimately to a level which we haven't touched since January 17th, 2020. And, you can see the rest on my watch list up here is quite red, with the exception of the VIX, that being said, and the short ARK fund. So interesting stuff there. But, I'm surprised Bitcoin isn't down. Wait, I shouldn't say that. All right, so it's down 1.5%. I didn't want to look and it be down like 4%. But overall, yeah. I mean, until those market conditions just become a little bit favorable, I think it's just got to just be patient and take your opportunities when you can. But there's just not a lot of obvious ones right now.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about this multi-year critical level of 40K, CJ, and the potential for a bounce from this level. We've made comparisons between what we're seeing now and what we saw in the summer of 2021. But I think you shared a really nice tweet from Alex Kruger this morning that kind of just talks about and sums up how those market conditions are very different. I don't have it ready. If you could pull that up, that'd be great. But I know basically the premise of it was that, in terms of the differences in these market dynamics, the Fed was ultra dovish during that time of that summer period from June to July of 2021. sentiment was more panicked. Now we're seeing more, of an apathetic tone to this market. Volatility was very, very high. Now we're seeing the exact opposite. CJ, you pointed this out yesterday. We're starting to see a bit of a volatility squeeze that we typically see during these, periods before a large move. Also, funding right now it's right around zero. But what we saw in June and July of 2021 was a very negative funding rate. And one thing that we talk a lot about is that one thing that propelled us out of that, bearish neutral consolidation in June to July was a short squeeze. Without that catalyst, we may have consolidated for even longer. People got short, those shorts got squeezed, and that propelled us back up to new all-time highs. Now we're not seeing the same market dynamics stack up, so I wouldn't anticipate, similar price action to what we saw back in June and July, even though we're at a similar price point, like Mr. Kruger just pointed out in that tweet there. Overall, market conditions are very different, and I think that starts with the Fed and their just overall outlook on this market and how it's, very, very different from how it was, just a short 8 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely there, Monty. I mean, difficult time to trade, without a doubt. A lot of the macro cyclical factors that we've looked at historically that have given like oversold signals and optimal accumulation signals are like flashing right now. They are saying like it should in theory be an optimal time to accumulate things like the, NVT signal, things of that sort, fear and greed, obviously as well. But if it becomes more of a macro asset, and by that I mean it gets lumped in with the equity market, there's a deeper concern there that it breaks from that cyclical nature, and those previous indicators are a little less effective. So I think that it's just it's in kind of a very weird place right now. But anything you'd like to cover in terms of news? I know there's some land prices on ADA that I see here.
Yeah. I feel like we should definitely cover ADA today. We haven't really covered it much over the last half a year here, but that's for good reason. I mean, look at this chart here. This thing has, just like I said, been getting beat up here since the top in the beginning of September. And, we saw this increase in price here. That was on the back of the announcement of the Alonzo hard fork coming and the promise of future utility coming to the Cardano network. Since that happened, there really wasn't much utility at all. There was lots of development occurring, lots of commits occurring, but no true development, no true, milestones for the Cardano network. And you can see that reflected in price. Now you compare that to a similarly capped asset like Luna. During that same period of time, Luna has basically been on the exact opposite trajectory. Tons of money piling into this trade, has been looking incredibly strong since the month of September. And ADA has been more or less the exact opposite. But as you can see, over the weekend here, we started to kind of bounce from these critical levels. We saw a really strong uptick in volume, and a lot of that has to do with some utility finally coming to this network, and that starts with Sunday Swap. The moment we have all been waiting for has finally come. On this Thursday, July 20th, Sunday Swap will be going live. CJ, I remember all the way back in September, you talked about Sunday Swap, how this will be the main DEX of Cardano. It's going to be important to watch, when this goes live. It's finally here. We've been waiting forever for this, but now it's finally here. The mainnet launch and ISO is this Thursday. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see, how much people actually use Sunday Swap, what exactly we see on Thursday. But I'm anticipating a strong launch, and, it seems like people have already kind of jumped into Cardano in anticipation of this launch. Now, one other thing that, another headline here that is definitely contributing to this positive price action from Cardano has to do with a metaverse project, and that is Project Pavia. You can find Project Pavia on Cardano's NFT marketplace, cnft.io. But basically, they have these various parcels of land. They're not even, you're not even able to develop on them yet. They're just doing the initial sales of these plots of land, and they are over 60% sold. This was actually as of a couple days, as of yesterday. That's more now, probably over 75% sold. But as you can see, these are fetching some relatively hefty prices, up to 750 Cardano. And, just a few weeks ago, these were going for, less than 10 times that. So you could get plots of land for, less than 10 Cardano. Now that's not possible anymore. as demand has spiked. And I think that is a contributing factor to why people have been rushing into Cardano here at this, very, very low level of $1.20 here. So finally, some utility coming. Obviously it's being sold into hard today after this move. Not too surprising when you consider what we're seeing in general with this market. But overall, I think that Cardano is worth a look at this point. I'm going to be patient with it because, like we just talked about, this is not necessarily an optimal market to be trading in. But given the fact that Cardano reached, $3 on the promise of future speculation, I think that we could see a lot of retail FOMOing back into this trade, just like we did here. They may have gotten burdened on this trade, but now that the utility is actually here, they may think that this is the time to do it. This is the time to get back into this trade. My thesis here is actually going to be correct here. So perhaps we'll see some money flow back in here and see Cardano reach new all-time highs. But, I think a lot of that is contingent on what we see in Bitcoin and what we see from the Fed as well. So going to be patient with that one. But finally, some utility coming in obviously had a positive impact on price for Cardano here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Cardano is worth, but it's definitely not 48 billion. I don't know. If they would have done this years ago, it would have been a lot more important. But now you just have so many other emerging dexes. I mean, I'm obviously biased a little bit. I love Spooky Swap much more. But you also have Osmosis, which is really cool. A dex on Atom with a custom wallet. It's not just a default MetaMask. So, Cardano does have a lot of competitors, but it's got a really dynamic following in the YouTube content creators who have their staking pools and they want to make money in their staking pools. So they're going to promote it to the retail trader and the retail investor. And for a lot of people who come in for their first time, they say, they see ADA, they see a YouTuber talk about it, they see that it's cheap and maybe they haven't missed the boat and so they buy it. The problem is I just don't think we're going to see that influx of retail money necessarily anytime soon. Maybe that's a little bit more bearish than it should be. But that's kind of just where I see it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I mean, in terms of a market cap valuation perspective, there's no reason why Cardano has to go up. But if you just look at it from, a utility perspective and from, what we've seen in terms of price action, it just seems to me like that, this dollar level has held up over time and it's held up with, little to no utility at all. And now that there's finally utility, finally incentive for people to be buying and holding these tokens, I think that creates an even stronger narrative for that being the price floor. And I think some people are kind of clinging to that here. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out later this week as we have the mainnet of Sunday Swap going live. We'll be watching that volume, seeing how it affects the price of Cardano. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless. So we'll continue to monitor that. But anything else we'd like to add, CJ, before we sign off on today's episode?
Just please hit the like button and subscribe. That helps Monty and I very much. We appreciate that. Also, if you'd like to know our personal trade ideas, get education, and check out our pro charting platform and our community of traders with insights around the clock 24/7, please check out the link in the description below. You can try the first week for just $7. So we appreciate that, guys. And we hope you have a great week in the world, wherever you are. We'll see you next time.